My fiancée cheated with 3 men at her bachelorette party. I sent the video to her entire family and friends, and her life was completely destroyed. She lost everything. I'm 30 years old, work in finance, and about 3 months ago I discovered something that basically destroyed everything I thought I knew about the person I was going to marry. And when I say destroyed, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I'm talking about 6 years of a relationship thrown in the trash in a matter of minutes. I guess I should start from the beginning, when I met Jessica, because I need you to understand that this wasn't just any relationship, you know? This was the person I was planning to spend the rest of my life with. We met when we were 24, at a mutual friend's birthday party. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized company. I had just gotten my first decent job after college, and honestly, it was like those stories you see in movies. We talked all night, laughed at the same things, and when I asked for her number at the end of the night, I already knew this was going to be something important. We dated for 6 years before I proposed, and during all that time, never, and I mean never, did I have a single reason to doubt her. She was loving, supportive of my career. We had plans for the future like buying a house, eventually having kids, all that stable couple stuff that people want. You know what I mean? The proposal was at her favorite restaurant. Nothing too elaborate but well thought out, with her best friends waiting outside to celebrate afterwards. She cried, said yes like 1,000 times, and I was there thinking, this is the happiest moment of my life. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. She was obsessed with every detail, from the flowers to the menu, spending hours on Pinterest and dragging me to taste cakes every weekend. I just wanted her to be happy. So I basically nodded at everything and paid for whatever was needed. The date was set for September. We had booked an incredible venue like 2 hours outside the city, and everything was going perfectly. Or so I thought. Her bachelorette party was scheduled for mid-July, about 2 months before the wedding. Her best friend Brianna, who I always thought was a bit problematic, but never said anything because Jessica adored her, was organizing everything. They were going to a resort in the mountains for the weekend. Girls only, you know, the typical bachelorette trip. Jessica was super excited, showed me pictures of the place, told me they were going to do spa treatments and drink wine and basically relax before all the wedding stress. I had my own bachelor party planned for the following week. Something calm with my friends. Nothing over the top. I told her to have fun, that she deserved it after all the work of planning the wedding, and I stayed in our apartment that weekend working on some reports I had pending. The Monday after her trip, I came home from work early, like at 4 inches the afternoon. We had a project that got canceled last minute and my boss sent us home. Jessica hadn't arrived yet. Supposedly she was in a meeting that would end around 6, so I had the apartment to myself. When I walked in, I saw a package at the door, one of those padded envelopes, and it had Jessica's name written by hand. There was no return address, just her name. Normally I wouldn't open her mail, but something about that envelope gave me a bad feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a weird sensation in my stomach. I picked it up, weighed it in my hands, and I could feel there was something inside, something small and hard. The thing is that envelope came with a note attached, one of those yellow sticky notes, and it just said, "Thought you should see this," in the same handwriting. No signature, nothing. And that's when I knew. Like my brain was already processing that something very bad was in that envelope before I even opened it. I sat on the couch, opened it slowly, and inside was a USB drive. One of those small ones, black, without any markings. Just that, nothing else. I stared at it for like 5 minutes, debating whether to plug, put it into my laptop or wait for Jessica to arrive and ask her what it was. But you know how it is, curiosity always wins, and besides that, feeling in my stomach was getting stronger. I plugged the USB into my laptop and there was a single file. A video about 2.5 hours long. The file name was just a date, the date of her bachelorette party. I started playing it, and at first it was just video of them in the car. Brianna driving and Jessica in the passenger seat, singing songs and laughing. It seemed innocent. Typical video of friends going on a trip. But I kept watching, fast-forwarding through some parts where nothing interesting happened, until they got to the resort. The first few hours were normal. Them settling into the cabin, taking pictures, making drinks. Jessica looked happy, relaxed. Exactly how I expected her to look at her bachelorette party. But then, like an hour and a half into the video, things changed. They had gone out to a bar in the nearby town, one of those places with live music and lots of people. The video was clearly recorded from Brianna's phone, who seemed to be documenting everything. And then I started seeing things I couldn't process. Jessica was dancing with a guy, not like engaged people dance, but like very close, with his hands on her waist, her laughing and obviously flirting. I thought, well, maybe she's a little drunk. Maybe this is just innocent dancing. I was trying to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. But then the video continued. I saw Jessica kiss that guy at the bar. A long kiss, nothing like an accidental peck. I saw Brianna recording and laughing, as if it were the funniest thing in the world. And I saw how after a while Jessica, Brianna, and two other friends, Ashley and another girl I didn't know well, left the bar with 3 different guys, including the one she had kissed. The video kept going, though with some cuts. And what I saw next literally destroyed me. They were back at the cabin. Everyone, obviously drunk, and without going into graphic details because, honestly, it hurts me to even think about it. Jessica had sex with not 1, but 3 different guys that night. The video showed everything, and Brianna had recorded parts of it like as if it were entertainment. I sat there watching the laptop with my mouth open, feeling like someone had kicked me in the stomach and then run me over with a truck. I couldn't breathe right. My hands were shaking so much I had to close the laptop because I couldn't keep watching. 6 years. 6 years of my life with this person, planning a wedding, thinking about having kids with her, and she does this 2 months before we get married. I didn't cry in that moment. It was like my brain couldn't process the information fast enough to generate a coherent emotional response. I just felt numb, empty, like everything I knew was a lie. Jessica got home around 6:30, arrived all smiling, gave me a kiss on the cheek like always, asking me how my day was. She was acting completely normal, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't destroyed our entire relationship less than 48 hours ago. I responded with something generic. I think I said fine or something like that, and she went to change. While she was in the bedroom, I took the USB, put it in my pocket, and started thinking. Because the thing is, I'm not the type who makes dramatic scenes. I wasn't going to yell at her or confront her in that moment. I needed time to process, to decide what to do with this information that had basically just exploded my life. That night was the longest of my life. Jessica fell asleep peacefully next to me. I stayed awake all night staring at the ceiling, replaying that video in my head over and over. Part of me wanted to shake her and demand an explanation, but another part, the more rational part, knew that wouldn't change anything. She had done what she had done, and there was no explanation or apology that could fix that. The next day, we take unequated completed of video. Tuesday, I woke up early, like at 5 inches the morning. Jessica was still sleeping. I started packing my things, the essentials, clothes, important documents, my laptop. I worked silently, methodically, taking out everything I needed and putting it in my car. I left a short note on the kitchen table. It just said, I received a package yesterday. I watched it. Don't look for me. That was it. I didn't give her elaborate explanations, didn't write her a long letter detailing my pain, just those 3 sentences. I drove straight to that same resort where she had her bachelorette party. Ironic, right? But I needed to be far away, somewhere I could think without her finding me. I rented a cabin for the week. Truth is, I had accumulated vacation days at work and never used them. So I called my boss and told him I had a family emergency. Jessica started calling me around 8 inches the morning. I guess she found the note. She called like 50 times that day, sent like 100 messages, each one more desperate than the last. At first she was asking what had happened, then she started begging me to talk to her. Then she admitted she had made a mistake, without specifying which one, and finally she started promising we could fix it. I didn't respond to any of them. I blocked her number, blocked her social media, basically cut her completely out of my life in a matter of hours. While I was at that cabin, I spent a lot of time thinking about my next move. Because here's the thing. I could simply break up with her privately, cancel the wedding, divide our things, and move on. That would have been the easy option, the civilized option that many people probably would have taken. But something in me, maybe it was anger, maybe it was pain, maybe it was just the desire for there to be real consequences for her actions, made me decide that, no, that wasn't enough. If she was going to destroy our relationship that way, I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she was. It sounds vindictive, I know, and it probably was. But in that moment, I felt completely justified. The first thing I did was call the wedding venue and cancel everything. We lost the deposit, like $5,000, but honestly, I didn't care. I explained to the event coordinator that unforeseen circumstances had arisen and the wedding would not be taking place. He was understanding, probably had seen this kind of thing before. Then I called the photographer, the DJ, canceled everything. Each call was like closing a chapter of a life that no longer existed. Jessica kept trying to communicate with me, now through mutual friends, but I told everyone I didn't want to talk about it yet. On Wednesday, I decided it was time to talk to Brianna. Because she hadn't just allowed this to happen, she had recorded everything, had been an active accomplice to the betrayal. I called her from a blocked number and told her I needed to see her, that it was about the package she had sent. Assumed it had been her who sent it, though she never confirmed it. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop on 7th Street, a neutral one where they didn't know us. When I arrived, she was already there, and I could see on her face that she knew exactly why we were there. She looked nervous, was playing with her coffee cup, avoiding my gaze. I sat across from her and just said, "Why?" She tried to play dumb at first, asking what I meant, but I took out my phone, opened a screenshot of the video I had saved, and showed it to her. Her face went pale. She started with excuses, saying they were all very drunk, that Jessica didn't know what she was doing, that it was just a bachelorette party and these things happen. I told her that if she thought that was a valid justification, then she was even more despicable than I thought. I asked her directly if she had sent the video, and after a moment, she admitted she had. She said she felt bad, that she thought I deserved to know. But when I asked her why he didn't tell me before, or why she didn't stop, Jessica, in that moment, she had no answer. I told her I was going to make sure everyone knew what had happened, that both Jessica and she were going to face the consequences of their actions. She started begging, saying her reputation would also be ruined, that she was just being a good friend supporting Jessica. I told her that a good friend would have stopped Jessica before she did something that would destroy her relationship, not record, while she did it. I got up and left the coffee shop, leaving her sitting there crying, and honestly, I didn't feel a single bit of remorse. My next step was to talk to Jessica's parents, Carol and Thomas. They were very conservative people, religious, the type who value family and commitment above all else. I knew that if anyone was going to react strongly, it would be them. On Thursday, I drove back to the city and went straight to their house. When Carol opened the door, she looked surprised to see me, but invited me in. Thomas was in the living room reading the newspaper. Carol immediately got defensive, asking what her daughter had done, probably assuming I was the problem. I took out my laptop, plugged in the USB, and told them to watch the video. I didn't play the whole thing. I wasn't going to subject them to 2 hours of that, but I showed them the key parts, the parts where it was clear what had happened. Carol's reaction was immediate. She started screaming that it was impossible, that her daughter wouldn't do something like that the video had to be fake or manipulated. Thomas, on the other hand, stayed silent, looking at the screen with an expression of complete disappointment and disgust. I explained to them that this video had been recorded by her best friend, that it was real, that there was no manipulation. Carol started crying. Thomas closed the laptop and asked me what I planned to do. I told him the truth, that I was going to make sure Jessica faced the consequences, that all our mutual friends would know what she had done, and that I wasn't going to protect her from the truth. Thomas nodded, said he understood, and that I had the right to do what I considered necessary. Carol tried to defend her a bit more, saying things like everyone makes mistakes, that Jessica really loved me, but I simply told them that if they wanted to continue supporting someone capable of doing that, it was their decision. What I didn't expect was for Carol and Thomas to take such drastic action. That same night, According to what I learned later from Nina, a mutual friend, they confronted Jessica. They showed her that I had shown them the video, and when she tried to deny it or downplay it, Thomas told her that if she couldn't even admit the truth and take responsibility, then she wasn't the daughter he thought he had raised. Carol, despite her initial reaction, ended up supporting Thomas. They told Jessica she had to leave their house, that they couldn't look at her knowing what she had done, especially because they had been helping her financially with the wedding and supporting her relationship with me for years. Jessica, according to Nina, was completely devastated. She tried to apologize, promised she would change, but her parents were inflexible. They kicked her out that same night, literally told her to pack her essential things and leave. She didn't have many options because the lease for our apartment was in my name, and obviously she couldn't stay there. She tried to call me again, I guess to beg for shelter or help, but I kept my phone blocked. She ended up staying with Ashley, one of the friends who had been at the Bachelorette party, but that situation didn't last long. On Friday, I started sharing the evidence with our mutual friends. I didn't make a public post or anything dramatic like that, but I did talk individually with people like Nina, Kyle, and other close friends. I showed them parts of the video, explained the situation, and let them draw their own conclusions. The reaction was uniformly shock and disgust toward Jessica. Nina, who had been friends with both of us, immediately cut contact with Jessica. Kyle, who was basically my best friend, was furious, saying he couldn't believe Jessica was capable of something like that. The news spread fast, as always happens in friend groups, and within days practically everyone in our social circle knew what had happened. Brianna and Jessica had a massive fight, according to what Nina told me, who found out from other people. Apparently, Jessica blamed her for sending me the video, for ruining her life, and Brianna told her that she had ruined her own life with her actions. Brianna, ironically, also started losing friends because people saw her as an accomplice, as someone who not only allowed but encouraged Jessica's behavior. When Jessica tried to ask her for help finding a place to stay, Brianna told her she didn't want anything to do with her, that she didn't want her drama to affect her own reputation anymore. What followed was like watching dominoes fall one after another. Thomas worked at the same company as Jessica, in a different department, but he had influence there. According to what I found out later, he stopped protecting her professionally, and when her boss found out about the drama, because someone in the office started spreading the gossip, Jessica started facing work problems. She wasn't fired immediately, but the environment at her job became toxic. Her colleagues avoided her, some made passive-aggressive comments, and she basically became a pariah in her own office. Ashley, who Jessica was staying with, eventually asked her to leave after like 2 weeks. Apparently, Ashley's boyfriend didn't want the drama in his house, and also Ashley herself started distancing herself because the association with Jessica was affecting her own friendships. Jessica tried to stay with other friends, but everyone had excuses. Everyone was suddenly very busy or didn't have space. The truth is, no one wanted to get involved with someone who had become the center of so much negative gossip. By mid-August, Jessica had basically lost everything. She quit her job because the environment was unbearable. Her parents still weren't talking to her. She had no friends willing to support her, and she was sleeping on couches or in cheap hotels when she could afford them. She tried to send me messages through email, because everything else was blocked. Long paragraphs where she apologized, where she promised she would do anything to fix it, where she said it had been the worst mistake of her life. I never responded. Not because I was being cruel for pleasure, but because honestly, there was nothing she could say that would change what she had done. Nina kept me updated occasionally. Not because I asked her to, but because she felt I should know how things were developing. She told me that Jessica eventually rented a small, run-down apartment in a less desirable area of the city, that she had gotten a part-time job at a coffee shop to pay the rent, that she was basically living a completely different life than she had before. All her friends had completely abandoned her. Even the ones who had been at the Bachelorette party were trying to distance themselves so as not to be associated with the scandal. Kyle, when Jessica tried to ask him for help finding work, told her directly that he didn't want to have anything to do with her. I, meanwhile, was processing all this in my own way. I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't easy. There were days when I would wake up and for a second forget what had happened, and then everything would hit me again. But there was also a kind of satisfaction. I'm not going to deny it, in knowing there were real consequences for her actions. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was more like feeling that justice had been served in some way. I started going to therapy because a friend recommended it, and that helped a lot to process the trauma of the betrayal. My therapist asked me if I felt guilty about how things had turned out for Jessica, and honestly, I told her no. She chose her actions. I just made sure the truth came to light. By the end of September, the date that was originally supposed to be our wedding, I was starting to feel like myself again. I had gone on a couple of casual dates, nothing serious, just testing the waters and reminding myself that there was life after Jessica. I sold the apartment we shared, it was in my name anyway, and moved to a new place, smaller but more modern, in a different neighborhood. It was like physically closing that chapter of my life. Nina told me that Jessica had tried to reconnect with her to ask about me, but Nina told her I had moved on, and she should do the same. The last time I heard anything about Jessica was like 3 weeks ago. Nina sent me a message saying that Jessica had finally stopped asking about me, that she had accepted that what we had was definitely over. She had gotten a slightly better job in administration for a small company. Nothing compared to what she had before, but enough to survive. Her parents, according to what Carol told Nina's mom, still weren't talking to her, but at least they weren't actively angry anymore, more like disappointed and distant. She and Brianna never reconciled. That friendship was completely destroyed. Do I regret how I handled everything? Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if exposing Jessica so completely was excessive. But then I remember that video. I remember how she acted like nothing had happened when she came home, and I think no, that she needed to face the consequences of her decisions. People make mistakes, yes, but there are mistakes and there are deliberate betrayals. What she did wasn't a moment of weakness. It was multiple decisions throughout a night where she actively chose to betray 6 years of relationship and everything we had built together. I guess the lesson here, if there is one, is that actions have consequences and that the truth eventually comes to light. Jessica probably thought she could have her moment of fun and no one would find out, that she could go through with the wedding as if nothing happened and build a life based on that lie. But the universe, or Brianna, or whoever sent that package, decided I deserved to know the truth. And once I knew it, there was no way to unknow it, no way to pretend everything was okay. Now I'm focused on my career, on rebuilding my life, on eventually finding someone who values trust and commitment as much as I do. I don't hate Jessica. Truth is, I don't even think about her much anymore. It's more like a learned lesson, a terrible experience that taught me a lot about human nature and about what I'm willing to tolerate in a relationship. And yes, I was probably ruthless in how I exposed everything. But when someone betrays you that way, when they destroy something you believed was real and solid, it's hard to feel compassion. Maybe that makes me vindictive or unforgiving, but it's the truth of how I felt and how I acted. Life goes on, I guess. Jessica is somewhere trying to rebuild what's left of her life, and I'm here doing the same from my side. The difference is, I don't have to carry the guilt of having destroyed something good with my own hands. She does.